Good morning. Actually doing it in the morning this time. Welcome to Speaking in Your Basement. Today we're going to talk a little bit about story structure. My primary goal is to help you become a high gravity speaker. That's something you have before you even walk into the room. Something that people start to notice as soon as you show up and before you even open your mouth so they can hear what you sound like. That's what I would encourage you to look for when you're working on building your charisma, your network, getting more success in business or relationships. But a big piece of that long term is storytelling. You're going to be telling stories, whether that's to friends, whether that's to employers or potential employers, coworkers, employees. You're going to be telling stories. And when you tell stories more effectively, it has a more profound effect. So an approach for this is just to have an outline. Now, not every story has to fill in the blanks like 1, 2, 3, and now you got your story. But to have an idea of the structure of stories is very powerful. It's very useful. It can help you structure a solid story much more quickly. And sometimes you're going to need to go through it and kind of crank it out quickly. Or you might have to do like I'm doing now, speak extemporaneously, speak on the spot. And you might need to okay, what's my structure? And fill in your structure in a moment, just the moment before you start speaking in your head, and then you actually go through and give the impromptu speech. But I'd had long ago from college and high school, I had sort of a soft structure for storytelling in my mind. It just kind of accidentally spilled over from writing essays. There was this 3-paragraph format. Actually, it was 5. It was like intro paragraph, 3 main points, and then conclusion paragraph. And that was how I learned to write an essay in high school. I relearned that in college. And I saw this structure lots of other places. So it just kind of naturally, anytime I tried to make a point, I was trying to have like 3 items that supported the point, or 3 moments in my life where I lived through something, or 3 of something felt like the right number. I still think there's usefulness to that, but it felt very incomplete when it came to storytelling, when I thought I really want to get better at telling a good story. So when I was a kid, I was a big Star Wars fan. And I found out after I'd geeked out on Star Wars in my 20s, I believe, for who knows how long, that that George Lucas had based the original Star Wars trilogy off the work of a guy named Joseph Campbell, who worked in mythology. He was an academic, but he worked studying different cultures and mythology and old stories, and he found a structure that showed up in stories all across the world, particularly the most successful stories. So I got into his work, and I watched some of his videos, and I read articles and a variety of different things. One of the basic works where he talks about this topic in particular is The Hero with 1,000 Faces. I tried to read that book numerous times. To this day, I've not gotten through it cover to cover. I've read parts of it. It's a bit dense. It's very academic, and it's useful. There's lots of interesting things in it, but for me at least, it was a lot of work trying to get through it. That felt like a little bit of a dead end, like I was struggling just to get through it, and how long is it going to take me to really understand this to the level where I'm applying it in my stories, particularly if I'm going to get good enough to apply it in my stories instinctively. Then I heard of another book by a guy named Christopher Vogler. Vogler, I believe, was a Hollywood screenwriter, and he had studied Campbell's work as well. He had taken what Campbell wrote and had modified it and simplified it a little bit for use for screenwriters, but it's been used by actors, directors, novelists, lots of different people to structure their stories. And I've never read that entire book either, but it was a lot simpler. I could get it and kind of get a practical lesson from it, where here's how you do this and move on with. So that was good. A lot of what I'd wanted to do with storytelling was tell stories for potential customers, for the business I've been working on for a long time now. And I wanted to tell more compelling stories. I told people about my business, about the solutions I offered. I wanted to tell interesting stories. And Vogler's stuff wasn't perfect for that, although it was the best I'd found yet. Well, enter Russell Brunson, who, big name in the realm of internet marketing, popularized the ideas of funnels. ClickFunnels is his primary product, or at least as far as I know. In one of his books, Expert Secrets, he drew on Vogler, drew on Campbell, but gave his own simplified version, which is ideal, or at least it looks to be more ideal when you're telling persuasive stories in a sales or marketing, business building context. The only challenge, I wanted to do this extemporaneously. I wanted to be able to do what I'm doing now, basically tell a story more or less off the top of my head. It doesn't have to be instantly, but where I can just think it out for a minute or two and then go right into the story and not have a long checklist of things I have to fill out. The weird thing at this point was I ended up going back to the beginning. I was like, all right, that's a good structure. I'm definitely going to use that structure, but how can I go even simpler with this? I mean, maybe I just want to tell something really short and quick and have that be it. And and that's applicable in almost every area of life. When you're making a point, you share a quick story on it, that makes the point more valid. It gets things to land at a different area. Rather than just trying to reach someone intellectually, you're now involving them emotionally. How can I do that quickly? Oddly, I went back to the beginning. I recalled there was a basic explanation in Joseph Campbell's book on the hero's journey, and it was just a 3-step version. He ultimately gets into his full 17-step version, which was what I was trying to figure out. But if you just look at the 3-step version, it's very simple. Separation, initiation, return. The hero separates from the more or less mundane world or his ordinary life. Initiation goes through trials and challenges to learn something new, to discover something potentially about himself or about the world. And then the return. He comes back with the boon, with the ability to share what he's learned with the world, with other people. Separation, initiation, return. And it's primarily that structure I've been focusing on. Why tell you this story? When you have this simple structure, you've got the structure of how things can carry someone away from what they're used to, go through some challenges that they might not be comfortable with, but gain something of value from those challenges, and then bring that value back to their day-to-day life. That's the structure I try to use when I'm telling quick stories. And I still remember that structure even when I'm telling more complex stories, when I'm following Vogler or Brunson's structures for storytelling. I like to look at this to keep in mind the simple version of it. So, of course, if I have to go short, I can tell you the simple version of it. But it helps me inform the more detailed versions if I keep the big, simple sequence in mind. Now, you don't need to go more complicated. If you just use this structure for your storytelling, you're going to tell better stories. You're going to be more compelling in casual or personal environments, but also in professional situations. There's a lot of companies that like your interview to essentially be storytelling, just professional, brief, to the point stories, but still storytelling. Tell me about a time when you demonstrated leadership, and then you tell them a situation, you go into what the challenge was, and then you tell them how that resulted, what it turned into. How did me facing this challenge and overcoming this challenge result in a better result for the employees or the company or whatever the environment was? You're using something very simple to what we just talked about: separation, initiation, return. And if you use this structure, you're going to see its value throughout your life. And it doesn't take that much work. It just takes a little bit of practice, just like that daily practice we've been talking about. So if you want to add to your daily practice or just make your 5 minutes a day, separation, initiation, return. Get a little more comfortable with storytelling. It'll take you far. I'm Ben Langley. Thank you very much for spending some time with me today. We'll talk again soon.